since these seem to be popular, here's some more ghost stories. So for context, my mother has had this little girl ghost that follows her around and has followed her since she was a young kid. And one of the ways that I could tell she was in the living room was there was this door that had been sealed off because my mother had put a cabinet in front of it on the other side. And then to make it look prettier, had hung a curtain across that door to kind of hide the fact that it had been blocked by a cabinet. And every now and again, when we were sitting in the living room, out of the corner of your eye, you could see the curtain breathing. And when I say breathing, I mean it would go out and back in, and out and back in, like lungs expanding, like somebody was standing behind the curtain and their chest was expanding because they were breathing and the curtain was moving with their chest. And there wasn't a vent or anything under this curtain because it was a doorway. And one time I was watching Black Butler Book of Atlantic in the living room, and there was kind of a scary-ish scene, for young kids anyways, I imagine, where there is like a sword fighting scene where Elizabeth, the little girl, fights off a bunch of zombies with swords. And so I had noticed the curtain was breathing, and I was like, hey, just so you know, like I paused the movie, I was like, hey, just so you know, there's about to be a really scary scene that comes up. You might not want to watch this. And the curtain breathed for about 2 more seconds and then stopped. She was like, oh, it's scary? Never mind, and fucking left. Another time, I was cooking and I could hear spices rattling in the spice cabinet. And I thought, oh, fuck, there's a mouse in there. Gross. So I opened the cabinet to see what was causing the rattling. And there was no mouse. And I was like, the ghosts wanted to play with the spices because there are a lot of little kids in that house. So I left the door open and I was like, okay, I'll leave this open so you can play with the spices, but when you're done, you need to close the door because I'll forget. And I finished cooking and I went and sat down and ate my food. And as I was eating, I heard the door slam shut. And the freaky part of that is they had slow close hinges. So whatever closed it had to close it hard to make it slam. And I was home alone and on the other side of the room, so I couldn't have caused it. Another time, when I was on vacation at my grandparents' house, my mother came upstairs because she had heard noises in our rooms and opened the door to my room and saw my fairly extensive collection of stuffed animals in a circle on the floor like they were having a tea party. My mom was like, that's freaky. Hey, Adrian probably won't like you playing with his stuffed animals. You need to put them back before he gets home. And the next time she went upstairs, they were back on their shelf. And I had, in fact, not left them in a circle. They always stay on their shelf. So.
Story time about how I'm hopelessly in love with my boss and I'm about to be a homewrecker, but help me! Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. So I've been working for my boss for 3 months. He's in the tech world and he makes lots of money. And he hired me as a personal assistant. He's got a wife and 3 kids. They've been married for 15 years. And he's 18 years older than I am. One day my friend told me that this guy was looking for a personal assistant and I applied for the job. I had my first interview and right away I was super attracted to him and I could tell that he was attracted to me. Like, you know, when you like someone and, you know, there's just a vibe between you guys. He then called me in for a second interview, and in this interview, we basically spoke about everything he would want me to do and what the job entailed. I mostly had to run his schedule and set up meetings for him with clients and different things like that. So it's not like I was getting him his laundry or running errands for him. A few days later, he calls me and tells me that I got the job. He offered me a lot of money, more than it was advertised at the beginning when I went for the interview. So I took the job. But here's the thing. From the time I did my first interview, I had not stopped thinking about this man. Like, I already had feelings for him before I even started working for him. So I decided to dress really cute for my first day, and he noticed. I mean, I was playing this man like a fiddle. My goal was to get him to fall for me. After the first week, he asked me to go to lunch with him to celebrate the fact that I had been doing a good job. Of course, I said yes. Went to this beautiful restaurant and had wine. We then went back to his office and I went home. Later on, he sends me a text message saying that he's so proud of me for doing such a good job. Fast forward a few weeks, I kept flirting, he kept flirting back. Finally, at the end of the month, we went to another lunch. This is when he opened up to me and told me that he was attracted to me. I told him I was attracted to him too. After my first month of working there, he took me out to lunch and decided to tell me that he was attracted to me. So of course, I confessed to him that I was attracted to him as well. I mean, duh, it was so obvious. At this point, I had done everything in my power to make him fall in love with me. I wore the cutest outfits, always did my hair and makeup. If I went to Starbucks, I would always get him a drink as well. And I would even bring him home-cooked meals sometimes. So in other words, I went out of my way to make him see that I am totally wifey material. And yes, I was always aware that he was married and had kids, but he didn't look happy with his wife. She never came to the office, and they never spent any time together. And according to him, she had an affair last year, and he's pretty sure that she's back with the guy that she was having an affair with. First, I didn't know whether to believe him or not, but then he showed me screenshots of messages that she had sent to this guy. That's when he asked me if I wanted to go have lunch again. Then he asked me to go to the movies, and we made out the entire time. So I'm sitting there making out with my boss. That's when he tells me that we have to keep this hush-hush, because if the company finds out, he will be in major trouble and so will I. But he's a high earner in the company, so he can't be messing around. This would ruin his life. Ever since the first kiss, he basically treats me like his work girlfriend. And every day for lunch, we go out to a restaurant just to get to know each other. It's the only time we have together. About a week ago, he asked me if I would be willing to marry him if he divorced his wife. I said yes right away, but honestly, I'm not sure if I want him to leave his wife for me. And his kids. I never thought of myself as a homewrecker. Well, because I said yes, he said that we should try to find a way to tell his wife. I don't even want to meet this woman. And he wants both of us to talk to her. I told him we should wait at least a few months before we do that. That's when he got me a new apartment. That way, when he leaves his wife, he's already got a place to stay. And of course, he wants to live with me right away. It's a luxury apartment and I love it. So now that he got me my new luxury apartment, which I'm totally in love with, by the way, I have a sauna in my shower. He wants us to plan out how we're going to tell his wife. Like I said in part 2, I don't know if I want him to leave his wife for me. I see a future with him, but do I really want him to leave his wife and his kids for me? He even wants to start planning the wedding. He wants to move in together right away, plan the wedding, and get married. He promises me that his kids will love me and that his wife won't have a problem because she's already having an affair with someone else. But I feel like that's just him being hopeful and it's really not going to be that easy. So I opened up to my family and I told them what's going on. My mom told me that as long as he leaves his wife and everything is good with the kids, then we should feel free to be together. But ultimately, she doesn't want me to be a homewrecker. I definitely feel like things are going way too fast. Tomorrow we're gonna go taste a bunch of cakes at a really nice bakery. Oh yeah, and he even took me shopping for a wedding ring. He wants to buy me one that's $40,000. It's 3.2 carats. So unfortunately, now that I told my family, a few cousins found out what was happening. And one of my cousins reached out to my ex. She told him what was happening and he called me to ask me not to marry this guy. He says we can work on our relationship. But let me tell you, this ex was totally toxic. He would monitor everything I would do. He never let me have friends, and he didn't even allow me to have Instagram. Oh yeah, and he's kind of broke. I was the one paying for most of the stuff in the relationship, so I don't even know if I want to open that can of worms again. But part of me thinks he's right. I shouldn't be rushing into this. But on the other hand, I found myself a wonderful man. He's so loving, caring, so generous, and he's actually super fun to be with too. I've never felt more secure in a relationship before, and I know that most women would love to be with him too. What do you guys think I should do?
I had a falling out with my family, which led me to be homeless. I ended up living in my Subaru Forester with my fiance, who was living with me at my parents' house at the time. We made a bed out of camping pads and sleeping bags along with a ton of blankets. We stored our food and drinks under the rear seats, which kept it from freezing. This all happened in the winter months of Pennsylvania. Most nights, the weather was around 10 to 20 degrees in Fahrenheit. Camping in your car isn't technically legal here, so we had to hide it. I found a clearing in a remote area of the state forest that wasn't used in the winter. There was no winter maintenance, so we would follow our tire tracks the exact same way every night. This let us know we were alone and nobody had been there. Living in your car in the dead of winter is unnerving but also peaceful at the same time. One night we woke up to see footprints in the snow circling our car, but they led into the woods and disappeared after that. On colder nights, we'd bundle together and use a remote starter to run the car and warm us up. There was a porta potty in walking distance, and the nearest gas station for food was 20 minutes away, sometimes longer if there was more than a few inches of snow on the trail. This went on for most of the winter into the spring until I was in an accident. The roads leading to our spot were all 2-lane roads with no passing zones. My fiancée was following me in her car since the snow was gone and she could make it down the trail now. Someone passed both of us using the oncoming lane while doing double the speed limit. The road was cold and wet, so they lost control. The accident caused a chain reaction of my fiancé's car sliding into mine when I had to slow down to avoid the accident ahead of me. The police ended up accusing us of racing with the driver, who passed away in the hospital a few days later. Multiple charges were brought up against us and we couldn't afford to lose our driver's licenses over it since we both worked in the automotive industry and it was a requirement. Homeless and living in our cars with little money, we were faced with the choice of losing our licenses for something that we didn't do or hiring a lawyer to prove our innocence. Even though we couldn't afford it, we chose the latter and had to pay $1,000 each. The deadline for payment was short and we ended up selling almost all of our possessions that we had left in order to pay it in time. They threatened to drop our case multiple times over it, which only added to the stress. My fiancé's car barely survived after being in the body shop for almost 3 months. My car, which doubled as our home, was totaled. I used the insurance check to finance the car from the dealer that I worked at. I fell behind on the payments because of the lawyer fees and the lack of work in the shop. There wasn't even enough work for everyone to make 20 hours at one point. I left the shop and worked for multiple food and grocery delivery companies to support myself. My car was repossessed and we ended up sharing my fiancé's car. Delivering food for multiple companies was barely enough to pay the bills. Food became a once-a-day luxury most of the time. Sometimes customers wouldn't put the right zip code for their address or take too long to buzz me into their apartment, so I ended up marking the food as delivered and keeping it. This happened once with a lady who put the wrong town, and instead of driving over to the next town, I kept it. They got multiple pizzas and sandwiches, which ended up lasting us 3 days. I'm not proud of it, but my hunger and frustration with my living conditions got the best of me. It was the only time that I ever stole anything in my life. I'm working in a motorsports shop now and doing well with it. I still have debts to pay off, but I'm moving into a trailer with my fiance this fall. This will be our first home together that's truly ours, and we're excited for it. I still deliver food, but it always makes its way to the customer now.
I feel like a lot of people undermine the importance of mental illnesses, and this is exactly why they should never be taken lightly. Audie Sanchez was a 33-year-old mother of a 3-week-old baby. She had severe mental illnesses but was never given proper care for them. She started to hear voices in her head and became very paranoid. These voices were telling her that she needed to get rid of her baby because the devil was inside of him. Once she started hearing these voices telling her these things, she tried to admit herself into a psychiatric hospital, but they denied her, sent her home with some medication, and told her, hey, you're crazy, but you're gonna have to deal with it by yourself. Audie was aware that these thoughts weren't normal. So when she would feel like she might do something bad to her son, she would give him to her sister. But her sister would give him back to Audie after she thought Audie was good again. Although she knew Audie was having thoughts about harming her own son. She knew about Audie's severe mental illnesses as well. Their whole family did. There were several warning signs, but the baby was never taken out of her care. And this led to a devastating outcome. One night, Audie was staying with her mother and sister after she got in a fight with her baby father. Audie's sister had woken up to some loud screaming. It was Audie screaming after she had cut her son's head off and ate part of his brain. This is part 2 of why you should always take mental illnesses seriously. After Audie Sanchez had decapitated her 3-week-old son and ate part of his brain, she quoted, I didn't mean to do it, he made me do it, referring to the devil. She first started hearing voices in her head when she took drugs for the very first time. Do not do drugs, kids. I'm telling you, you're gonna end up decapitating somebody. The saddest part about all of this is that this could have been prevented and that baby could have still been alive if people would have taken her mental illness seriously. Literally just 6 days before this happened, she had met with the counselor and told them that she had voices in her head telling her to harm her own baby. The counselor claimed this was her postpartum psychosis, which is when a mother responds negatively to her pregnancy, sometimes feeling like she needs to harm her child. The counselor did report that Audie needed mental evaluation, but the hospital didn't see the severity of the situation because the counselor failed to mention that Audie was hearing voices specifically telling her to harm her own child. Once they evaluated her, they concluded that she just heard voices and had hallucinations. In court, she was found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Story time about how I had to send my dogs on my neighbors. I had to send them on my neighbors, you know why? Because they tried me. So just so y'all know, I am, and so are my 2 daughters, and they are the opposite. So one day my daughters were playing outside minding their little black business, and our neighbors pull up. So the woman goes inside of the house, and the man stays outside staring at my children like they are some lost animals. So he goes, what are you guys doing outside? Mind you, I'm in the kitchen, but the window is raised so I can hear everything. So they answer him, oh, we're just playing it. Then he goes, man, you people really love being in the sun, don't you? I had to pause my music and stop what I was doing to make sure he actually said that. My daughter then says, I'm telling my mommy. This fool had the nerve to grab my child and tell her she ain't telling nobody nothing. This fool clearly didn't think I was listening. I walked out there with my ready to go K9. I said, let her go. He says, well, she tried to attack me. I'm like, something gonna attack you in a minute. He says, if you can't control your daughter, then before you can finish, I'll let that dog go. Ironic how I'll let the dog on him. This story time is about the last time I saw my mother. This is sad. So go ahead and get your Kleenexes now. I was an only child and my mom was a single parent and we lived in Georgia. She got this new job as a bank teller at this bank by our house. She was excited when she got the call and they confirmed that she got the job. Her plan was to work there long enough to eventually become a manager. After she got confirmation that she would be working there, we celebrated. So boom, first day comes around and she sits me on the couch and she tells me about life. She was just going on and on about how you can do and be whatever you want to be. It doesn't matter if you're a felon. It doesn't matter if you're smart. If you think you're not, it doesn't matter. She says, I don't care if it's just me and you until the end of the world. We're going to be okay. In my head, I was like, blah, blah, blah. I was 11 at this time, just so you know. So yeah, she goes to work and I go to school. So after about 4th period, I heard the bell in my class. Ding! And they called me to the office. I asked why I was in the office and everyone looked scared to tell me. They told me that there was a robbery at my mom's bank. And unfortunately, most people were, including my mom. I wish I cherished her more. My teacher forced me to repeat a grade just because I passed my classes way too good to be true. I'm going to explain this to y'all and I'm going to explain to you how I passed those classes so good. So my teacher couldn't stand me, right? She would salivate at the idea of me having to fail a class. And mind you, I was failing. But the end of the school year started to come around and I was still failing and I needed to get that grade up or I was screwed. So one day I was waiting after school outside looking like a sad lost puppy dog until my male teacher, Mr. Sams, came up to me. I told him I was failing my math class and I was going to be screwed and he told me he could help me out with that. I just knew I was going to get lucky. He locks the door and he shows me this app called Goth Math. Completely free, live tutorials, step by step. and they teach all math. When I tell you this app saved my life, even though she wanted to, she couldn't fail me after that. My grades were way too good. I have to pass this knowledge on. If you are in school, check this app out. Link in bio.